Uh-huh.
All right, so let's get started. Again, this is tea time. Good morning. We are broadcasting from South Florida, and my name is Jason Weeks. I'm a staff member at Unity on the Bay, and I just want to introduce our guest this morning. Our guest today, Angela Ribeiro, is a longtime energy healer and former head manager of the Johrei Fellowship Spiritual Healing Center in Miami Beach, Florida. Her passion in life is to help those on the spiritual path to awakening to their own reality as divine beings. She's my friend, and I know she's a dear friend to many people at Unity on the Bay. She's a sacred server and is always just willing to jump in wherever we need help. Good morning, Angela. How are you?
Good morning, Jason. Good, and you?
I am fantastic. And like I said earlier, it's just a pleasure to see you. And you always bring a smile to my face when I see you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is there anything I missed there in your introduction? Is there anything else you want people to know about you?
No, that's good.
That's good. So today's episode is actually about our ability to heal ourselves and others, and how spiritual healing can produce not only physical healing, but most importantly, harmonize. Oh, excuse me, harmonize all aspects of our lives. Understanding how it works can help us become instruments for the life force energy of the universe. Some call it divine light, and bring about a transformation in our lives at a deep level. So, being tea time, you have the opportunity to ask questions as we go along, but I do have some questions I want to ask Angela this morning. And I want to start with Angela. Where did you grow up, and what influenced you to become a spiritual healer?
Okay, so I'm from Brazil. So I grew up in Brazil and I moved to the United States to train. I used to be an athlete. I was very passionate about my sport. I used to be a springboard diver, platform diver. But when I quit my sport, I felt that there was something missing in life. You know, when you are passionate about something, you look forward to it. But with the end of my career, life became a little grayish, and I was looking for something that would bring about some passion, some desire to grow. That was when I was introduced to the teachings of Joe Goldsmith back on 1988. He was an amazing teacher and spiritual healer, and that rise up the desire in me to get to know a little bit more about that. And that was when I was introduced to the Johrei Center. And the good thing about the center was that the center was open every day. And so I had the opportunity to learn about spiritual healing and also be able to put it into practice. And what I've realized with spiritual healing is that a lot of people think that it's mostly towards the healing of a physical body. But what I realized most importantly, it is to help us awaken spiritually, and that the physical healing of it is just an added benefit.
Oh, that's really interesting, because that's something that I wanted to ask you about. I'm a fan of Harry Potter. I don't know if you've ever watched it or not,
Yes.
but there was one of the movies, well, throughout the series, when any of them break bones, there's sort of this potion that they drink that all of a sudden heals their bones. And I think some people out there think that spiritual healing, is just about that. Um, and you're saying, once you heal almost your spiritual self, it's the body follows suit.
Yeah,
That's what
because
I'm hearing.
yeah, this is from what I learned at the Johrei Center, is that we have a physical body and we have a spiritual body and we have a spiritual atmosphere. And the spirit always precedes the physical. So if they have like a physical issue, it's very likely that you have a spiritual issue. And if you just address the physical aspect of your problem and you do not address the spiritual aspect, that problem will continue to reoccur. But when you forget about the physical and you address the spiritual, it will have an impact not only in your physical body, but in all departments of your life. So spiritual healing covers, I mean, everything, like relationships, you know, just everything.
Mm-hmm. So would you say, like, if somebody breaks a bone, is there an issue with them spiritually, or is it was just a mishap and they just broke their bone?
I mean, it could be just like the break, it's an accident. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Because I know there's a lot of misconception around that. Like somebody will fall and trip or hurt themselves in some way, and they sort of look at themselves like they've been doing something wrong spiritually, and this is sort of their punishment or their lesson that they have to go through.
Right.
And that's just not true sometimes.
No, I don't believe it. I think, you know, things happen and it's just how we deal with them. And we can use spiritual healing as a tool to attract more harmony into our lives.
Yeah, and I would think that maybe if you break your bone or something, of course, there's the pain that comes along with that. And when you're working on yourself spiritually, you probably go through that process a lot easier than other people would. Maybe there's less suffering or...
Yeah. And I love to use the example of Myrtle Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, because as you know, she had the tuberculosis diagnosed to have only 3 months to live. And what changed her was when she was introduced to the New Thought movement. And obviously, when she was introduced to the idea of her being a child of God and therefore inheriting all divine qualities, that did not cause a change in her physical body right away. It was something that was just introduced to her. And then she began to work on herself through the practices of, mostly like I did on the last hour service. She began to talk to the life of each organ of her body, verbalizing that the life of the organ. It was interesting that she didn't talk to the flesh of the organ. She talked to the life of the organ, saying, you're intelligent, you are efficient, you are perfect. And she was doing that on and on again. And what happens is that begins to cause a transformation in your consciousness, because now you begin to believe about that for yourself. And eventually it began to reflect in her physical body. But most importantly, it was a transformation of the way she saw herself and of her belief, which brought about the healing of the physical body. And not only that, it turned her into a very powerful healer. So when people saw her own healing, they began to seek her out. Can you do that for me? You know. So the first one was the neighbor from across the street who was crippled, and she began to pray out loud to him, like verbalizing, you know. And he was able to experience a healing, and then he told somebody else, and on and on. She became very popular. So people from all over, they were coming to seek help from her.
It's almost like you're reading my notes, because that was the next question I was going to ask you. And it started with, you know, you're right. One of the pillar beliefs in the Unity movement is that we're all children of God and we don't inherit sickness. So my question was going to be then, why do we need spiritual healing if we are already divine?
It's a good question. And I believe that most of us, even though we are divine, we have forgotten our divinity. And we have been conditioned to believe since the beginning that we are separate from God, that we are limited, that we are a victim of the circumstances of life, sometimes that we are unworthy. So even though we are divine in nature, we need to begin to awaken to that reality within ourselves. So I think that that's where the art of spiritual healing plays the most important part. It is in the transformation of the way that we see things. And as we transform the way that we see things, it have an impact in all aspects of our lives. And in the case of the Fillmore, they were not only experiencing the difficulties with her health issues, he also had health issues, but they were also experiencing financial issues because he was a realtor, and with the real estate market crash, they got into a very difficult financial condition to the point that they were going to be evicted out of his house. there was a sheriff that knocked on the door, you know, telling them that they needed to go out. And he told the sheriff that his father was going to take care of it. And the sheriff thought that he was talking about his real father, but he meant his spiritual father. But
wow.
that was to show that he had confidence in the things that they were learning. And they continue with the path of introducing themselves. They use a lot of affirmations and meditations, and they were not only able to transform their physical difficulties that they were experiencing, but also they were able to demonstrate prosperity to the point that they created the Unity Village.
Yeah, a beautiful, beautiful village out in Missouri.
Yeah.
Which I think Charles Fillmore thought would be sort of the mecca of spirituality in the United States at some point. It's really beautiful, and the energy out there. I know you've been out there is just
no, I haven't
palpable.
been out there.
Oh,
no,
you haven't been out there?
No, I haven't been out there. It's one of my lists to go. Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to let you go because I think you won't come back. It's absolutely beautiful, and the energy is amazing. I'm going to pause for a second and just check in with our viewers and see if anybody has a question. Again, I remind anyone watching, you know, we're talking about the art of spiritual healing this morning with Angela, who happens to be a spiritual healer, and she's practiced Johrei for how many years, would you say?
Since 1991.
Since 1991, and Johrei is very similar to Reiki.
Yes.
So if you have any questions for her this morning, please put them in the comments. But I want to give some shout outs to some people that I see are watching us. Reverend Chris Jackson, good morning. Omar, good morning. Esteban Londono says, we love you and we love you back. Let's see here. Any questions? Reverend Juan is watching. Good morning. And Rachel Davis and Carlos Perez is watching as well. And Yami, good morning to everyone. Like I said, if you have any questions about the art of spiritual healing, put them in the comments and we'll stop from time to time and try to get those answered. Shall we move on with some more questions that I might have or that I have?
Yes.
All right, let's see. In your opinion, what is the fast track to spiritual healing?
Okay, it's a good question. And so I'm going to use what I've learned with the Spiritual Healing Center that I was with. And as I have mentioned before, we have a physical body, we have a spiritual body, and we have a spiritual atmosphere. The way that we think, for example, if we have a lot of resentment, if we have anger, if we are filled with fear, those type of thoughts and emotions, they begin to bring in spiritual clouds to our spiritual body, which cause us to be almost blinded to reality. And so the practice of Johrei, for example, is to address those spiritual clouds, to clear them out, to get them out of the way so that we can experience the peace, the joy, the harmony, all the divine attributes that are already present within ourselves. So to fast track our own process of spiritual healing, one of the most important things that we can do is to begin to become vigilant as to what it is that we are holding in our mind. So when we begin to catch ourselves having fearful thoughts, choose not to embrace them. When we begin to feel that we have thoughts of resentment, choose not to embrace them. Thoughts of conflict, choose not to embrace them. And if you look at how Myrtle Fillmore did to herself, that's precisely what she did. Because in addition to doing a lot of affirmations to affirm the truth of who she was very careful as not to dwell on thoughts that will cause her to be afraid or to be concerned about life. So that's the step number one, because when we are free, when our spiritual body is free of spiritual clouds, we become a great transparency, not only to our own physical healing, but then it gives us an opportunity to become a transparency to facilitate other people's healing. So, so that's how we can expedite, because if I'm engaged in spiritual healing and yet I'm dwelling in thoughts that cause me to be afraid, that cause me to be anxious, that cause me to be resented, that it's not gonna work. So I think on the spiritual path, one of the most important things that we can actually do is to learn the art, to be vigilant, to watch what's going on in our inner universe, and to begin to choose wisely what it is that we are going to allow to begin to spend more and more time with. So that would actually expedite our process to our own healing. Another thing that we can do is to continuously introduce our consciousness to high vibrational content. We can do that through reading spiritual literature. We can do that by watching YouTube videos, by watching our own services, the Om Hour and the Sunday services, where we are introduced to new ideas. Because when we avoid having those negative thoughts and we constantly expose ourselves to higher thoughts and higher vibrational content, we begin to spiritualize our own consciousness, which will allow us to experiencing more healing. And I would like to mention that spiritual healing is not necessarily related to the healing of our physical body, but just to bring about the harmony of our entire well-being.
Yeah. And would you say, Angela, that, you know, like I hear you talking about making sure you watch your thoughts and you sort of get into your consciousness, this spiritual material, but are you saying that we should strive to be overly positive all of the time? Like, is that even possible?
No, we have to accept whatever it is that is taking place, and instead of rejecting, just sit with it. But what I am recommend for is, if I'm sad, I'm hurt, whatever it is, let me sit with the emotion that I'm feeling, but let me avoid dwelling in the thought that caused me to feel that way. Because if I'm feeling hurt, but I'm constantly thinking, I'm feeling hurt because of this, next time that happens, I'm going to do that. What I'm doing is I'm throwing gasoline into the fire. So if I can sit with the feeling, I'm feeling hurt, let me sit with that pain so it can begin to dissolve into a state of inner peace. Then I'm healing that emotion. I'm giving it space to be. I'm allowing it to be. I'm watching it. I'm being present with it. But I am avoiding throwing gasoline by continuously to focus on that thought that caused me to feel that way to begin with.
Would you say that
it's impossible to be positive all the time, but when you begin to be vigilant as to what's going on with your state of consciousness, you realize that you have the power to choose. Am I going to embrace this thought of conflict? For example, when I used to have conflict with other people, I used to believe that it's their fault, you know, until I realized that, as one day I went to my altar and I said, I just want peace in my life. And the answer that I got back was, if you want peace in your life, you need to first find it within yourself. And I thought, wait a minute. Then I began to realize that within myself, there was no peace. Within myself, I was having conflict with the people. And that conflict was externalized. So when I realized that I had something to do with it, and I say, you know what, when the thought of conflict is presented to me, I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to choose to not to pay attention to it. And I realized that it was very helpful because it helped me bring about harmony in my relationships.
Yeah, and it puts us back in the driver's seat. It puts us back into being in control, if we can be, of our lives and taking responsibility for our lives, instead of pointing the finger and saying, you're what's wrong with me.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very wise. Let's talk a little bit about meditation and the role that it plays in our spiritual healing. Does it play a big part?
Very big part, because what I've learned with myself and my practices, when I'm able to bring myself into a state of peace, that's where healing takes place. So for example, when I first joined the Johrei Fellowship, I was in a complete distress with my life. It was really anxious. I lost my job. I lost my car. There was a lot of a feeling of uncertainty. And when I went and I experienced my first healing session, what I've noticed was this profound sense of peace. The Johrei session, you are in a state of meditation because you're not talking and thinking, you're just sitting there in peace. And I realized that that peace that I was experiencing at that moment helped harmonize the conditions of my life. That's why I kept on returning to the center again and again. So the practice of meditation will help us get in touch with that center of peace within ourselves. And that spiritual peace in and of itself is very powerful because it goes out and begins to harmonize our lives. So the art of meditation, the practice of meditation is precisely to help us disconnect from the business and the problems and go back to that center of peace that is already present within ourselves. So it's very important and highly recommended.
Yeah, I think it's almost like the default nature of the mind to be like so crazy and like grasping for things and making up assumptions. And I think when we get into that practice of meditation, it does help the mind sort of calm down, where we can start looking at some of the thoughts that we're having, or start look at some of the patterns that are coming from our thinking.
Yes.
How long do you meditate every day?
I do several mini sessions. So like in the morning, I do my walk. I try to at that walk, do affirmations, because I'm really realizing the powers of affirmation. As soon as I come back from the walk, I sit down for about 20 minutes and just try to be quiet. And then I do work. I work from my house. And then in the middle of the day, I take a break and I go in to meditate for another 20 minutes. And it's
Nice.
Wonderful to take a break in the middle of the day, because I notice when you are working, you begin to boom, 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 you begin to build some perhaps tension or perhaps business. And I just take a break. I go back into my room and I just sit quiet, and it's like taking a vacation. So I really, really enjoy it. And then I do a little bit more in the evening. I try to implement the practice of mindfulness. And the practice of mindfulness, it's very hard to be mindful all the time. But what I try to do is to do some ordinary activities, being fully mindful. Like, okay, I'm going to take my garbage out. Let me be fully mindful. I'm picking up the garbage. I'm walking. So I try to do like little practices like that. I'm going to do the dishes. Let me do it in a mindful state. I'm going to cook a deal. So I try like several times a day, do a 2 to 3 minute mindfulness practice. Just like, let me be fully present right here and right now. And I find that to be also really, really helpful.
Yeah, it helps us remember the juice of life, like just how exciting taking out the trash can be. I know it doesn't sound like much, but you get really in touch with the gift of life and what's always available to us now.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that burden us is the constant thought of future and past and business. And when we bring ourselves to the most mundane thing and be fully present, that gives us a sense of rest.
Yeah, I agree with that. Shall we take a little break and see who's watching and see if we have any questions?
All right.
Let me see. People are quiet this morning. Reverend Juan says, love and appreciate you, Angela.
Oh, thank you, Juan.
Aurora says, good morning, everyone. Let's see here. Faye is online. We all know Faye is part of our platform team on Sunday. Good morning, Faye. Gabby is watching. Oh, my cousin Aaron's watching. Hey, Aaron, good to see you. And Deborah's also watching. So if you're enjoying what you're hearing, give us like a thumbs up, hit the heart, just show us some love. We want to see those little icons floating up on the screen just to know that you're liking what you hear. And I'm enjoying this conversation. I love the topic of spiritual healing. the art of spiritual healing. So I'm going to ask you another question.
Okay.
I'm so lucky I get to ask all the questions this morning. And if you're watching, if you're not asking questions, then I'm going to be asking them. So get your questions in. So Angela, where might someone begin who is new to spiritual healing and perhaps kind of skeptical about it?
Okay, they can begin by looking at, for example, they may want to take like a Reiki class that it's easily available, or they can go into Johrei fellowship, which is easily available, or they can begin just by reading more, finding out about more, finding ways to get engaged. Perhaps I know that now with the pandemic, it's a little bit hard to do it. But once the pandemic is over, if they are able to go to like a Reiki circle to begin with, to be introduced to the idea, or if they, or just read about feel more how she healed herself, to become familiar with how she did it, so that maybe we can do it ourselves, or read spiritual literature from Goldsmith. He was a fantastic spiritual healer.
Got it. So is there, aside from the books that you mentioned, are there any like specific books that you would recommend people?
Well, Goldsmith has a book called The Art of Spiritual Healing, which is very good. However, his language is very mystical. If you're not used to the language, it may be a little bit difficult. But if you're used to mystical language, then the book is fantastic.
And I just want to say that when we do start having in-person activities at Unity on the Bay, we do have a Reiki circle twice a month that happens. So I would encourage people to come to that. It's usually Wednesday nights after the hour. And it's more of a group experience, but you can also get one-on-one Reiki sessions in case you're looking for that. We have a question. We finally got a question on our comments here, and it comes from Sherry, and she says, how to overcome from situations that you cannot change? Like, how do you overcome those situations?
Okay, so if you cannot change a situation, the best thing that you can do is to accept it. For example, we're facing a pandemic right now. I cannot change the fact that we're facing a pandemic. So I need to find, how can I go with the flow? How can I not fight, not resist, and just go with the flow with what is that is taking place and do the best thing with it? Like when life presents you, give you lemon, just do like a lemonade, put water, ice, sugar. So the best thing, like for example, for me, if I'm facing the pandemic and I cannot do, so I'm spending more time working on my spirituality. Now I have so many people, I don't have time to work on my spirituality because I have to do this, this, and that. Now is the perfect time to work on your spirituality, to do the best that you can to put things into practice. But the worst thing that we can do when we cannot change a situation is to resist it. That's the worst thing that I'm going to resist it. I don't like it, I'm going to resist. And the best thing that we can do is to know that we have the power to choose, that whatever is taking place in our lives right now is the effect or the result of some things that we haven't believed in the past. So if we are experiencing limitations, is to recognize, have I had limiting thoughts about myself that could be bringing this limitation into my life? So it's just doing an introspection without judging ourselves, without condemning ourselves. And for example, in my case, I realize now that I have more time to do an introspection, as how often I was having limiting thoughts or thoughts of unworthiness that were unchecked. They would pop into my head and I would just embrace it. Oh yeah, that's true. And now that I have the opportunity to do more spiritual practice, how much I was like, wait a minute, that's not true. I thought it was true. So I'm able to see how I was embracing limiting thoughts about myself. And now I have the capacity to say, you know what, I don't have to accept that. Because whatever, if I'm experiencing some measure of limitation, is because in the past, I have accepted thoughts of limitation as being real. So now I can begin to work on myself. I'm going to accept the limitation that I am experiencing, but I'm going to know that I have the power and the capacity to choose that from now on, I'm going to begin to affirm more unlimited thoughts about myself.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. And one of the overarching things that you said was really just looking at your beliefs and looking at maybe the thoughts that you're having around the situation.
Yes.
Like, what am I thinking that's making me so stressed about this situation?
Right. Yes.
Because I believe that there is a stressful thought in there. Like, this should be different, or this shouldn't be happening to me, or the world should be different. Right. Good stuff, Angela.
Yeah.
Sherry, I hope that answered your question. And of course, if you have any follow-ups to that question, you can always post those in the comments. Carlos says, Carlos Perez says, lots of sugar in my lemonade. I have a funny story about that.
In Brazil, they have cachaça, so they make caipirinha. So you can do like a lemon, sugar, caipirinha. You know, you can make it even more interesting.
That's funny. I recently, I don't think it's any secret that I love Starbucks, and one of the things I love there is their green tea lemonade. But recently, I've been going, and they've been out of the lemonade, and so finally, I was like, "What's going on?" And they're like, "You know, life has just served us so many lemons that we're out of lemonade." This is what the Starbucks barista said. It just made me laugh. It's like, yeah, we are getting a lot of lemons recently. A lot of people making lemonade. Just want to give a shout out to Kate that just joined us. Carlos says, yes, Angela, tonight's drink. You've given him a drink idea for tonight. Welcome, Deanna. Good to see you again. This is tea time. And we have about 10 more minutes left. And we are here with Angela Ribeiro, who is a spiritual healer, and we're talking about the topic of the art of spiritual healing. So if you have any questions around that you want to get answered, we invite you to put them in the comments section, and we'll be checking periodically to get those answered for you. I have another question.
Okay, so I'd like to share with you how because I love studying now. I'm being like a student of the Way of Mastery, which describe a lot of the Christ consciousness and how he was able to heal. And I thought it was interesting because if you look at how Jesus healed in the past, you see that he will look through any appearance, whatever the appearance was, and he will see through it and he will recognize perfection. So, for example, when the fishermen were fishing all night and then didn't catch any fish, and they came back and he said, "Well, let's go back in again." And they went into the same water, but now they caught a lot of fish. So the implication here is when you uplift your consciousness to the awareness of who you truly are, you are able to see through the appearance of the five physical senses and be able to recognize perfection, be able to recognize abundance, be able to recognize life where that was. That's why he was able to multiply the loaves and fishes and raise the dead. And so that's something that we should look forward to. Wow, that's the potential of humanity, to be able to look through whatever it is taking place in front of us with our five physical senses and recognize that behind that, there is another realm of existence in which abundance is, perfection is, wholeness is. And if we can keep our vision up high, then we become this perfect instrument of transformation.
And that's great. And I still am very compelled by the world of the five senses. For me, it's difficult to look through that. I mean, it's just so compelling. It feels so real, and the evidence seems so real.
Yeah, that's our condition. But when you begin to work on your spiritual growth, what happens is you begin to develop a sixth sense, so to speak, like a higher sense, which will begin to allow you to experience the other realm of existence as something tangible, not just something
I like
abstract, but something tangible, which gives you the conviction that in spite of all the appearances, abundance is, peace is, power is. So that's why the spiritual path is important, because it begins to refine your senses and develop in you the spiritual sense.
And yeah, I'm hearing you say that takes practice, but the more you practice it, the more that sixth sense becomes real to you.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. I love that. I love how you put that. Let's see here. Omar has a comment. I appreciate the reminder of positive affirmations when you're starting your day. Those are really helpful, aren't they?
They're really helpful, and that's what Charles Fillmore did. He would, before he go into meditation, he would spend some time with affirmations, and then he enters silence. And what happens is affirmations, they are not meant just to be like a parrot affirming something. What you want to do when you're affirming something, and I'm actually going to be talking about that in our next Om service. I would like to invite all of you to join us for the Om hour, because I'm going to be talking about some affirmations that we can do. But the purpose is to get in touch with the vibration of the affirmation to the point that you want to embody it.
Do you have any favorite affirmations that you use?
Okay, right. That's what I'm going to be talking about in the hour. But I'm working in the affirmations that has to do with I am. So you go I am, and then you begin to attach divine attributes to those affirmations, and then get in touch with the feeling. And if it feels like so far off, you can begin to think like, what if I am the Christ was real? How would I feel if I can say, well, I am the Christ, or I am wealth, or I am abundance? How would it feel like it? What would it feel like if you say, okay, I am the beloved and abundant son or daughter of God? Just how would it feel, Jason, when you affirm that I am the beloved, means I am loved, I am abundant, son of God or daughter of God? How does it feel? It feels wonderful, right? Just think about that.
It does.
I am the beloved and abundant son of God. It feels wonderful.
Yeah, I already noticed in my body like tension going away from my neck, like just
right.
I can breathe deep. It's like a lot less stress. Yeah, absolutely.
The intention is to bring that like not once a week, but regularly. Let me affirm regularly, and then get in touch with the feeling. Oh wow, it feels so wonderful to know that I am loved. It feels so wonderful to know that I am already abundant in spite of any appearances. Right? It feels wonderful. So the idea is with the affirmation is to get in touch with the feeling of already being in possession of those things.
And does anchoring yourself in that feeling help you remember it more often?
A lot. And it makes me feel good. And what I've noticed is, I'm going back to the example that I gave you about fishing for fishes. And I'm going to give you an idea. Instead of fishing for fishes, how about to fish for an idea that you can eventually embody it? For instance, I'm going to fish with the idea that I am Christ-like, and then I want to try to embody it. Because if you can't embody that idea, the loaves and the fishes, they will come as the added thing. So
Gotcha.
See, more importantly than fishing for the things of this world is to fish for an idea that will give you the capacity to have those things as the added thing.
It's almost, yeah, it's like a byproduct of what you're going after.
Yes.
Let me see what people are saying here, because we only have a few more moments left. Kate says, I totally agree. My best spiritual growth is early in the morning when I'm waking, listening to my Christian music, and thanking God for my surroundings and another day of life.
Perfect.
It's beautiful. Kate says, I am forgiven, grateful, and love are my best affirmations. I want to invite anybody who's watching, share your affirmations in the comments. Share some of the affirmations that you're using. I'd love to see them. Delana, I hope I'm saying your name right. She says, I think you are saying that at times we must accept and release what is, and then elevate going forward. Release with love, recognize that I had not healed the past slights between me and that person, so it was needing to be addressed. It wasn't, and I lashed out saying something I regret. I realized he was probably sent to test that part of myself. I think I failed that test. I do thank him for reminding me there is more work to do. Perhaps it's nothing to do with him. So I guess what she's asking is, like, do people really come to test us? Are we put in situations where we're tested or need to learn things? Do you think that's true?
Yeah, I think relationship is the fast track to spiritual growth, because what they do is they're going to show your own button. So if your button get pushed, it's to recognize, oh, here I have a button. How would I make this button not to become active? So when a person push, it doesn't bother me anymore. So from my experience, one of my greatest growths have been on relationships, and learning how to, first of all, not to attack back, because if I am attacked and I attack back, I create this vicious cycle. Okay? So it's learning, at least inwardly, okay, how can I take a deep breath and not respond with an attack right away, and use that relationship for my own personal growth.
So you're saying
it's not easy. Okay, it's not easy, but it does accelerate the process of your own spiritual growth.
Yeah, and I think that when you do come to the full realization that we all are part of God, like, you realize that why would I want to hurt, or why would I want to direct that energy to another aspect of me if we're all one? Like, why would I want to attack myself? It's just not kind.
Yeah, so one of the things that I do that is really helpful is to avoid having thoughts of conflict about that person in my head, because that will eventually externalize itself in a conflict. So the ideal thing is to catch yourself when you're having, oh, I feel so hurt, next time that happens, I'm going to respond in this way. Ideally, you want to avoid dwelling in those thoughts of conflicts, to avoid generating more and more conflict in your life. And try to learn, how can I deactivate those buttons that are being pushed, so that I can heal the relationship and allow it to unfold.
So many gems of wisdom you've shared with us this morning, Angela. I just want to thank you. You are amazing, and there's many things I know about you, but this one I want to share. You definitely walk the talk. I've known you for a while, and it's beautiful to watch you evolve and also spread this message that's so helpful to everyone. So thank you.
Thank you. It's not easy, and I do have my shortcomings and my faults, but the important thing is to get up and continue to try, and continue to at least know where you're going. The intention is, I want to go into a path of no conflict. So how can I remove conflict from within myself?
Beautiful. And since we're out of time, I like to do this at the end of every tea time. And Angela, want you to look in the camera, and if there's one message that you could get out into the world this morning for anybody who's watching now or will ever watch this, what would you say to them?
That the time has come for you to awaken to your own divinity. Don't spend too much time looking for the loaves and fishes, but get an idea in your mind that you can practice, that you can embody, that you can make it your own, so that the loaves and the fishes and the healing will be coming as an added thing.
Beautiful. I love you, and I know our community loves you. Thanks again for being here this morning.
Love you too.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.